Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at cmmsradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of you might know I recently had George Williams on to discuss the CMMS selection and utilization course that's offered at the University of Wisconsin. And today we are joined by Joe Anderson, and he is the COO of ReliabilityX. And Joe and I met at Reliable Plant 2023, which happened in Orlando. We had a really great conversation. By the way, I want to thank Noria Corporation for hosting that great event. Noria is going to be at SMRP. It takes place October 16th through 19th in Orlando. You can visit Noria at booth 121, and you can check out Lube PM, their lubrication management system, at booth 507. There's also a webinar coming up October 4th on driving reliability with 1-minute daily inspections. So take a look for that. And just getting back to Joe. Joe, first of all, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think, you and I were having this great conversation at Reliable Plant, talking about kind of what that conference really is, what it represents. And then we started talking about CMMS and some of these concepts behind best practices and where it kind of falls apart when, whether it's vendors or the people that use them are not necessarily following the right approaches. So I thought what we would do, since we didn't get time to record there, is today we kind of jump into the overarching viewpoint with, all of your expertise and experience when it comes to maintenance and reliability. When it comes to computerized maintenance management systems, software, solutions, we've got a ton of solutions out there because there's so many processes, right? The workflows and the styles of working that organizations have in plants, facilities, you name it.
Yep.
So what I'm curious about for you is, do you see that it's even possible to have a one-size-fits-all approach? Because that's one of the problems we see is they try to put themselves out that way, right?
Right. And in my opinion, I would say no. Given the various types of industries, the type of work being used, the type of ways that it's being utilized, there's so many different things. I think where we get it wrong in the industry a lot of times is we try to take a cookie cutter approach. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's CMMS, whether it's the way that we address, maintenance strategy or culture or any of those types of things. It doesn't make a difference. It's never a one size fits all. Now, there's a lot of commonalities for sure. But again, when you got, say, a public university, right, where their trades are completely different and everything, and you go into food manufacturing, which is multi-craft. How do you divide things by trade? How do you there's so many nuances to things that it would be hard to create that one size fits all. If they did, it'd be so expensive it wouldn't be worth the investment. And so,
Yeah, and it would probably be loaded with just excessive features that for some people it's going to scare them. And do you think it also kind of depends on whether you're a true enterprise operation versus, we hear the term SMB, small to medium sized business. You get variability there as well. And it comes all the way down to the working style of the teams and what they're really doing. Yes?
yeah, there's a lot of that for sure. But at the same time, right, it depends on your level of maturity as well. Some things will get you through to a certain point, but when you reach a certain point, you're going to need more information to make better decisions. I'll give you an example. A client I was working for here in the past few months, they're deciding to replace a piece of equipment on the wrong line because that line has more information than another line. talking about the asset from a life cycle costing perspective, when you look through your CMMS data, see what it's cost you to maintain and all that type of stuff, because they weren't properly using their CMMS, right? They're
Eh,
making bad decisions based on bad data.
right.
And the system that they have is a fairly large system, and I don't think they really need it for what they're doing. um, and you become overwhelmed by it. Well, the thing is, right, is this is supposed to, in a way, a CMMS system should make our life more convenient in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways, it's not. It's it's almost destructive, and so people don't want to use it because it's not user friendly, right? Because if I want to make it user friendly, the amount of money I have to spend with all add-ons and everything else that I need to customize it so that my guys would use it correctly, we're not going to invest in it, especially with low margin industries. Like
Right.
they're not going to invest that type of money. And so again, one size fits all. I don't, it's I don't even think it should be a debate, but it is what it is, right? So
Yeah, and it also kind of depends where you sit. Are
right,
you one of those companies, those vendors that provide such a solution? And it's pretty easy, having come from that specific background myself, to start to see and recognize, and they can oftentimes be very distracting, but you don't realize it, where, ooh, there's a market that's showing interest. Let's
right.
go over there, but we need this one little feature. And you get these stacked out systems that are just, for me personally, overkill. So I've always looked at things as something you said earlier. There's commonality across facilities, plant, other types of environments where the basics are essentially going to be the same. Sure, there's tweaks
Hmm.
and different skilled trades and approaches to their methodologies, theories of constraints, all these kinds of things. But when we look at a CMMS, for me, I want it simple for the people that have to use it, but
Hmm.
impactful for the data that it collects. But the data that it collects, it can't just be, give me all the data. What the hell are you going to do with that? And I think you and I were talking about that a little bit in
Yeah.
Orlando, where there's just so much data, which is awesome, right? It's really good. But now what the hell do you do with it? Because if you're not going to figure that out, you're also not going to get any benefit. So first we got big complicated systems that are too expensive to customize, and you can't get your people to use it because they weren't involved in the original decision anyway. And
Hmm.
now, either way, you're getting all this cool data, useful data, but you don't know what to do with it. And then the system doesn't even help you with that. I mean, we see all these kinds of troubles. How do you approach it when you're working with a client and consulting a client that, I'm going to do this is a two-part question.
Sure.
One, it's a client that does not have a CMMS, but you've identified that they do need one and there's benefit. And then I want to switch it up immediately after that to one that has one. What are the things that you do to guide them through whatever process that looks like
Well,
to find?
there's a couple things, right? When someone doesn't have one, I guess the first question is, are they ready for one? Because if you have a great paper system, there's inefficiencies for sure, um, but there's things that are more important than a CMMS system,
Mhm.
right? So if you don't know how to use a torque wrench, I think it's more important to focus on training their skills than worrying about getting data into a system, right? Let's do the fundamentals well first. To me, in a lot of ways, a CMMS is a convenience, right? It's supposed to be, I'll say, a convenience where a
Mm.
lot of times these initiative softwares and stuff, they take away from our focus on what the fundamentals should be. I'll give you an example. Organizations on average that we've ran exercises with have between 55 and 70 different initiatives going on at the same time, and trying to compete using the same resources to compete for their initiative, right? And now
Right.
we're throwing a CMMS in the mix on top of, well, we have a reliability initiative, we have a maintenance initiative, we have an operations initiative, we've got to cut our SKUs, we've got an inventory management initiative, we got, and we're all using this, trying to use the same resources at the plant to do 70 different initiatives on top of keeping the plant running, right? So there's some of those questions that you want to try to figure out first. What's the focus going to be? Is this going to pull us away from the things that we're good at? And then, we do help with, a request for quotes and requests for presentations and stuff like that a lot. So we have a set of criteria. We go through and ask them what they would like, try to rank things by necessity versus nice to haves. So they have some options there, with smaller systems. Everybody wants to go to Maximo, and Maximo's probably in the CMMS space would be considered one of the best, CMMS systems there are. But if I have 6 employees and I'm packing potatoes, I'm not going to pay for, if I have 6 maintenance guys, right? Like, I'm not paying for Maximo, right? So looking at some of these smaller systems, we have to balance the data that we need with some of the conveniences that we want to have, and what is a system that could fit that picture, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we kind of go through that process with the company that already has one. It's a lot of the same, but then the question is what is the data that we're getting out from it? Because if the discipline isn't already in place to put in good data, then it doesn't matter if you switch your system. Switching your system a lot of times is an excuse because you're not holding people accountable, putting good data into the system. So what we like to do as supposed leaders, right? I use that loosely in quotes because I feel this world lacks true leaders today, and that's one of the detriments of what we're seeing globally. But we do things to avoid having to do our job, right? And so, okay, my guys aren't putting data in the system. We need a new CMMS. This CMMS system sucks, right? It doesn't do X, it doesn't do Y. And then you get to talking to them, it's like, it does X and it does Y. You guys just aren't putting data in the system. So if you haven't already got the discipline to put good data in, you're not, what's the point in changing the system? Right? There's others that maybe you're a medium company and you're growing and getting into a larger company, you're going to outgrow some of these CMMS systems, right? And so you have to start looking and start planning. And so we go through the same process, where we're asking those questions: what are the nice to haves? What, versus the essentials and things like that. So it's kind of the same process, but it's a different approach to get there, right? To
Right.
try to understand what they're really looking for out of the system, versus just want to buy something so I don't hold my people accountable, and we'll
Yeah.
waste
Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars doing that. I see
Yeah.
it waste. I see it wasted all the time, man. It's no
Yeah.
joke, and um, it's one of those things that gets my blood boiling a bit.
Yeah. And
It's
again, this is kind of why I wanted to, kind of fish around this area, because what I think is important is when we have a conversation like this and we call a few things out that are really obvious, and other people are thinking it, they're experiencing it, and they're going, how the hell do I change this? When is it ever going to change? Is it really? And
yeah,
we can talk about that, and that might help somebody. And that's
sure,
why I like to do that on CMMS radio, because, getting insights from someone like yourself that really has been there, done that, but in many ways, like, you've dealt with
hmm,
multiple variable CMMS platforms, good
yeah,
ones, bad ones, and everything in between.
hmm,
You've dealt with different environments where they're trying to embrace that technology. And you've already talked about probably the most critical thing, aside from the decision making process, to actually select and then implement a system and not involving your frontline workforce, which is a common and terrible mistake that's so avoidable
hmm,
with a little bit of extra time. But now what you're also talking about is this cultural change, the behavioral change, and a lot of those challenges with adoption. People won't put the data in anyway because they don't care, they don't like it, they don't want to be watched, and that's because nobody said, "Hey, here's why. This is what
hmm,
this is doing for you."
yeah,
And that cultural change and the maintenance mindset, where maintenance people at all levels want to do great work. We all know that. You're going to hear it a lot on all of my episodes. And what they don't want is the disruption you keep talking about. So do
hmm.
you have strategies that you incorporate. I don't care which system it is. I don't really more like, let's be agnostic about the platforms. But do you have a strategy when you come into a situation where there is a system you've assessed and found that it is the right system? They can work with this. They don't have to make a change. What do you do to try to get the team to start moving in the right direction?
So prior examples help a lot. Like I said, the example of this client making the wrong decision, right? It's now a wake up call to everybody in the maintenance department going, there's nothing wrong with that box machine. We need a box machine on this line. And it's like, hang on, guys. Who's the one that puts the work orders in, right? And you're getting upset at them for making decisions based on the information you provided them, right? So those type of examples, and you'll see them over and over again, will come back to bite these maintenance folks because they don't want to use the system. But yet we're the ones feeding that information into the system so that other people can make decisions, right? And so there's got to be that level of accountability, a little bit of self-awareness from leadership, and the fact that, we have to communicate these things with people and have them understand why it's critical to have the good data. It's not just about metrics, which I hate anyway, because most of them are worthless. But it's not that you shouldn't measure something. It's just the fact that we don't. It doesn't matter. That's a whole nother conversation. That'd get me in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, my words will get misconstrued anyway, and then I get beat up for it. But
Yeah.
those examples go a long ways. Until really they get bit by it, it's going to be hard to change some of these people and their ability to put information in. But all in all, if we get them to understand the value of the system, right, even in all of its inconveniences, right, the good that can come out of it, a lot of times, and most people are going to try to do their best. And some of it really is, there's two things: a poor implementation by whoever's implementing, which
Mhm.
I thank them for because it brings us a lot of business, right? And so, continue that trend. But at the same time, it's kind of upsetting, right, that implementers aren't great at implementing. And then a lot of training. Well, what we'll do is we'll do a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation. This is how you use, pick a system, SAP. This is how you use SAP. Here's the 8 steps. All right, have fun, get work orders in the system. Right? We did nothing to address any of their concerns, any of those types of things. And so what we do is we start to build a resentment against the system because we don't know it. But my own ego's not going to allow me to say I don't know because I'm a maintenance guy, right? And this is how we operate. And so what we do is we become defensive
Mhm.
and just fight the system when really it is that I don't know, but I'm not going to tell you I don't know because you didn't train me well, right? And so, those two issues go a long way, I think, in solutioning a lot of the issues that we see today with any of the systems, right? And
Yeah.
I think we could fix it.
I think you're right that it can be fixed if and only if people seize those moments where, wow, we got a lot of work to do, but we're going to actually stop and do it. And that's really hard to do. I think we all understand, if I'm an organization that is, growing and getting busier, and then I find in maintenance operations or production operations as it relates to maintenance and reliability that, you know what, without tracking this and using a solution, we're losing. We're losing here, we're losing there, and then they want to incorporate that technology. It's not going to be overnight, hit the switch, good to go, rock and roll. It's
Yeah.
going to be, let's plan it, let's identify it, let's make sure everybody's on the same page for the why. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to be yes, yes, oh yes. It's
Hmm.
not about drinking the Kool-Aid. It's about, why does this matter to me? Right.
Right.
So if I'm a wrench turner, I want to turn wrenches. And now you're
Yep.
telling me that I got to do this. Okay. Can I do 2 clicks on each work order and just boom, 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 boom? I'm
Right.
probably going to use it. But the
Right.
why, what is this doing for us?
Well, the other thing too is getting them to understand what their job is. Their job isn't turning wrenches.
Hmm.
Okay. So maintenance, by definition, is to maintain, which means you guard or protect. You're keeping defects out of the system. By the time
Mm.
you start wrenching, you're not doing maintenance anymore. You're firefighting.
You're not that's right. Now you're doing
You're not
repair.
guarding or protecting. I'm not standing in front of it, not allowing these defects in. So my practices, right, aren't conducive to maintenance. And so, when you understand that part of your job is to get data in the system, part of your job is to keep defects out of your system, which means understanding precision maintenance, right? Some of your job is to monitor condition. So you're looking at PDM technologies, those types of things, right? So you're giving yourself the ability to see. What happens a lot of times in maintenance is we don't have the ability to see. And a part of the way that we see is through the number of defects being identified and put into the system.
Right.
Asset health is a very important metric. Now, I said I don't like metrics, but there's a select few that I'll get behind all day long, right? And asset health is one of those. I want to understand, where are my defects, right? This starts to give me visibility, right? If I walk a guy out to a conveyor, right? A simple conveyor, interlock conveyor, something, 4 bearings, a motor, gearbox, and belt and sprockets, right? And I walk them out there today and I just say, tell me what's failing next on this conveyor, right? They're going to
Mhm.
say, well, I don't know. They'll look around at some stuff and they'll say, well, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I know. You're walking around blind. You haven't given yourself the ability to see. For example, if I pull an oil sample on my gearbox every quarter, every month, or whatever frequency, right? As long as it's conducive to a trend, I now know what the condition of my gearbox is, correct? Yeah. Well, now I have the ability to see. Gearbox good, I'm good. Gearbox bad, I'm bad, right? I can see that. If I'm doing ultrasound and I have baselines on all my bearings and my motor and my gearbox, and everything's in line every month, I'm doing my routes, I know everything is good. I can see. I'm giving myself the ability to see, right? I'm keeping the defects out. If I have work orders against that conveyor, that means I have defects, which is another way that we can see. And
Mhm.
so a lot of the premise behind maintenance is that we need to be turning wrenches, and it isn't true, right? Our job is to keep the defects from even occurring in the first place, so that we're not turning wrenches. And this is the problem. We're in this vicious cycle of firefighting because we believe we should be out turning wrenches. Now, there's a time and a place for it. Planned downtime situations where I'm
Mhm.
doing corrective maintenance to get defects out of the system using best practices like understanding alignment and balancing and those types of things, using torque wrenches, doing proper bearing installation, right? Keeping all the defects out. That's when I should be turning wrenches,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And
So,
I
yeah.
I like the way you explain this to me and
Mhm,
for anybody else, where we tend to, and I've done it for years, where I consider maintenance to be several different things, and it's almost like CMMS platforms out there that are several different things when we need to actually know where do we draw the lines, not because we're trying to be hard asses,
mhm,
but because that doesn't belong over here.
sure.
Saying, "Hey, wait a minute, Greg, maintenance is this." Now we know,
Well, now we're defining roles and responsibilities, which
which
is
is
my job as a leader. I should be defining those and you should understand them, right? That it's not just go out and crank some wrenches and carry around the
Mhm.
toolbox all day and respond to the next call when something breaks, right? That era of maintenance was 60 years ago. We don't do that anymore. Okay?
and, and
We're not living in those times, right?
yeah, it's
We're
true.
better than that. And then that's based on all the forefathers before us in this industry that's
Sure.
brought us information, right? We're in a new age today. And I'm grateful for the forefathers, but things have changed. We have a lot
Mm.
more information today. We understand the way things should be done today, right? And if it wasn't for them setting us up, people like me and George and this generation, right? We're riding off of their backs, but we're building it up even more, right? And so having that understanding, but that again, it comes back to leadership and
Yeah.
defining roles and responsibilities, getting people to understand what your job truly is, right? And it's not about turning wrenches is the fun stuff because we like to fix it. But if you understand I can keep something from failing, it's a whole different ball game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
And that's the real name of the game.
well, it's no
It's-
stress
it-
now. I'm in
yeah.
control. See, the
Yeah.
thing is do the assets control you or do you control the assets? If the assets control you, you're reactive, which means you're not doing maintenance because it's no longer maintainable, right?
Yeah.
It means the defects are in the system, right? If I control the assets, I'm giving myself the ability to see. I have all my practices in place and we're implementing things the way we should be, right? So
Yeah.
now I'm in control. And that's what it's about. Are we in control? And the CMMS system is a great tool to give us the ability to see if it's utilized properly. We have to be able to put data in and get good data and get good data out, right? Not just throw a work order in because you said so, bearing bad on conveyor, right? There's nothing you can do with that. It's like, let's be professionals. We're maintenance professionals,
Right.
right? If your wife came to you, right, and just said, "Get in car, drive, milk," right? It's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, you know what I mean? And this is the data we're providing, and then we get mad at somebody that's saying, "Look, man, you don't know how to put in a work order." But again,
Yeah. How about how about those work order completions? Done.
yeah, well, yeah, done, yeah,
Very
fixed,
helpful.
fixed, and then 10 minutes later, you're back out working on it again,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it says
Oh,
fixed again, right?
yeah. I want to change it up a little bit.
All right, so
So, because all the things that we keep touching on, I mean, we could really, really go on an adventure, on a journey, and really,
yeah,
really carve those up for hours, right? And you
sure,
told me that you're like, man, I can go and go and go when
yeah,
we
yeah.
were talking in Orlando. So I am kind of in this space right now where I'm looking at, wondering about Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0,
I saw your
and they're
post on LinkedIn.
y- yeah,
I
and
was
I
half tempted to chime him in, but I figured that we would talk about it today, so
good
we
call,
would.
because
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, generally, we don't have to go too deep in the weeds, but what I'm learning
Let's go
from,
deep, man. It's a lot more fun. Let's do this because it's
all right.
systemic issues, right?
So let's talk about Industry 4.0, and we're heading towards, and 5.0 is upon us, working next to robots and AI and all this stuff.
Hmm.
But it seems to me that in a lot of instances it's being oversold, too many sensors, all this stuff. It's going to be the next coming, and this is going to solve all your problems. And everybody's, oh yeah, we're going to buy that. But I think a lot of companies are um, over promising, under delivering. Their tech's not completely ready, and then the teams that are buying this stuff and integrating it into their plants are, they're getting 2,000 sensors when they should only be getting 120 for the most critical assets, and they can't get out of the gate. They intend to, but they can't do it. It's too much. So what's the
Yeah.
problem? What's the
So,
reality?
there's a lot to unpack there, right? It's a very complex thing
Yeah.
because there's multiple variables
Hmm.
that we're seeing are some of the causes and some of the effects, right? So let's start with one. One, we're a fad society. Consultants and any salesperson that's any good takes advantage of fads. Okay. And they're going to sell you the latest and greatest fad. Lean Six Sigma was one, right? There's all these things. Reliability engineers, right? Which were actually maintenance engineers, but we called them reliability engineers, right?
Hmm.
That was a fad. So everybody had to have one. And so one piece is we take advantage of fads, and technology moves faster than our own skill development. Okay. So as you know, right, your laptop is old after 6 months. It's 110 years old in technology age, right? After 6 months. And so Industry 4.0 introducing technology, of course, 5.0 is right on its heels because technology is advancing. But with that, our skill sets are not, right? There's people out there that don't know what a crescent wrench is or a screwdriver, and we're talking about AI and robots and all this type of stuff, right? And so, in this country specifically, we don't have a labor shortage. We have able-bodied people that can work. We have a skills shortage, and it's completely different, right? That's a different issue.
Hmm.
And with the skill shortage, which means there's a lack of technical skill, and couple that with the advancement of technology, right? And really great salespeople. man, I would kill to be some of these salespeople and practice and hone my skills and have that ability, right, to be able to sell the next greatest thing. Now, there's benefits to it, but it's the top 1%, or even it's less than that, of companies that can actually afford it, one, and two, take the time and implement it correctly, right? A lot of this stuff is we throw it in with a bunch of promises and we don't fulfill the promise, right? And so it gives the technology a bad name. The technology is neutral, it's not good or bad. It's like a CMMS. It's all depend on how it's used and how it's integrated, and right, and what level of training do we have? Do we understand the benefits? Do we understand data mining and how to look at trends and things like that? I mean, there's a whole skill set that goes with using this stuff, right? Um, and so to just throw a shallow response to your LinkedIn post, I didn't want to do that, because there's a lot of issues behind this, right? But I think the main one is we need speed to market. That's why technologies aren't as advanced. They promise something. Look, I'll give you a simple illustration. Look at the video game industry, right?
Mhm.
They'll do these big video or these big conferences, right? 30, 40, 50, 100,000 people show up and they show the latest trailer of the newest video game and everybody gets excited. And then here it is 5 years later and the game's still not released, right? It's like um, we do this stuff all the time with technology because we want to be the first to do it. And so I throw a crazy trailer out. So if anybody else copies me, I can say, see, we were the first to do it. Or, you can go after them in other means, right? But they want to be that first. So they throw it out there. It's not ready. Get everybody excited. And then don't ever finish it, or they get gobbled up by some bigger company and it's tossed to the wayside. I mean, you see that type of stuff all the time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so it's, again, we keep going, but there's so many variables
Yeah, I think
um, as to the reason why, right?
and I think
Um,
that's why I wanted to get into it, because I know we can't unpack it. There's too much
no,
there. There's
right.
there's so many different ways to slice it, and
Yep.
it's not necessarily about being right. It's about, hey, let's just think about this. Let's improve a little bit. And the
Yep.
only way you can do that is if you figure out, where are people making the mistakes? They didn't intend to make those mistakes, but we all have to also stop and say, okay, um, like something with the post where it wasn't that I really want everyone thinking I'm trying to say that, oh, 4.0 failed and all this. I mean, you could
Hmm.
look at it that way. What I'm
Yep.
saying is almost along the lines of what you're saying is, if people aren't ready for it because they lack certain skills that they naturally lack. I mean, you can't know what you don't know until you know it,
Right.
right? And
Hmm.
learn it and apply it.
Yep.
And then it's this great technology that does great things. I would love, in my CMMS days, if the platform I represented, that I was part of the build out and everything, right? Where all the things we tracked about a piece of equipment, if we could start to automate that from a sensor on a piece of equipment or an air handling unit or something like that, I
Hmm.
think it's great technology. I just think it's
Yep.
a big, big ask to say, company A that's buying what I'm selling you, this will do all this. But now, once that gets executed and the check is in the mail, so to speak, everything starts to fall apart after that. And that's what's important to solve, because companies are spending way too much money on the technology, they're buying way too much of the technology, and they're doing it too soon. Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Well,
Often.
timing is everything,
Yeah.
right? There's a time and a place to where you're at a certain level of maturity, you can afford to do that stuff. What happens is, a lot of times, right, is, again, it comes back to implementation. They throw a bunch of sensors on and dump it in your lap. Now I have to do the work. Well, you knew your stuff. You were implementer, right? So you know what you're talking about. Me, I don't have a clue. Now it's in my lap and I have to try to figure it out, and I have to try, and that's the first thing that goes.
Yeah.
Because I have equipment failing. I've got to answer these calls. I've got to run over here. I'm in meetings all day. I've got all this other stuff going on. I can't manage this system, right? And that's a lot of it. But again, the thing is it's about the right timing. There's a million benefits to having it. There's nothing, I'm not against it at all.
Right.
I just
Right.
think that we're outpacing our ability to get our skills up to the level to be able to handle the technology. And that's what's scary to me, right? This is why they talk about replacing you with a robot.
Right. Right.
It's a lot
Because
easier because one, robots don't complain until they're AI
yeah.
and then they decide they're going to take over your business. But that's a whole nother thing, right? But it's it's a lot easier than dealing with employees. But again, this comes back to leadership in my eyes as well. It's another way to avoid having to do my job as a leader,
That's
right?
and every time you bring that up today, and we talked about it a bit in Orlando as well. I mean, this is it's great. A lot of the things we were touching on that I was already saying at the beginning of this episode, oh, some of that we couldn't record. And sure enough, we're talking about it
Yeah,
in a little more tame way. But yeah, I think with the leadership, that's a big thing that everybody's talking about now. And I've come to realize that conversation has never gone away,
no,
and it's not going to. We're not going to wake up one day and go, all the leaders are trained and understand and they've become self-aware, or they've talked to Rob Kavalrowski, right, who's out there trying to help bad bosses become better bosses. It's not
mhm,
about throwing those guys under the bus.
yeah.
It's about guys and gals, I should say. It's
Well,
about
it's people like Robert needed, right? I mean, we've got to be able to train him. But here's the thing: is um, I think it's a deeper issue than that,
yeah,
right? Is
much.
we're in a convenience society today, where we want. Well, there's a few things. One, we want everybody to do the work for us, right? The only way
Mhm.
to become a great leader is you have to build yourself, which means you have to put in the work. You've got to go practice. You've got to go make the mistakes, and it takes time. Two, we don't have the patience. So take time to build something. No, I can just watch a video and I can do this. It's like, okay, if you think you can, right? That doesn't make you a great leader because you watched a whole, webinar series on leadership, right? That it's you have to go out and practice it. You've got to go make mistakes. You've got to be under bad bosses so you can learn what not to do. You got to be under good bosses so you can learn what to do. Right? I
Mhm.
mean, those are mentors, whether you want to believe it or not. I mean, those are people in your life that are teaching you one way or another. You can learn from everybody. I've made a ton of mistakes in my life. The great thing is I'm self-aware enough I can look back on it and say, well, I don't want to do that again. That didn't work.
Well, you and if
Right.
you're not willing to make a mistake, I
Right.
mean, I think about that all the time too, whether you're a
Yeah.
leader or not. I mean, everybody's at least a self leader, right?
Right.
And
Well, yeah.
if you're not willing to just accept right now that there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be problems, you're going to fall, you're going to scrape your knee, and it's time to just get back up and go, oh, that's why that happened. I'm going to try to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. Now you've grown,
Yep.
as opposed
There's risk
to
in everything,
absolutely, and that's life
and
happens in the risk.
right. And
So
that's where you learn. And I think, today we're so driven by fear that it paralyzes us. That's another thing, right? Is we've had in the past a lot of struggles, and men and women in those generations, because of those struggles, they learned from it, they understood, they overcome it. They were
right.
stuck with, they had no choice. This is what you have to do to survive. Today, with modern conveniences and everything, we haven't had to struggle. So we find things to create to make it a struggle, right? And we do all this stuff. And there's that. There's the side that people lack purpose today, which is a huge thing, especially in men with the 68% suicide rate. It's 68% suicide. Of the suicides are men, right? Well, we as men, we need purpose, right? What is it that we're going to do? Why are we here? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You have that, there's, like I said, it's some deep rooted things.
And
Um,
I love
yeah.
those topics. I love those discussions and that exploration because again, that builds awareness, and then how we bring that back into
Mhm.
maintenance management, computerized maintenance management, all these things is that We're people,
Yeah.
and we're moving through the world. Part of that is the work that we do. We want to do good work. And of course, there's plenty of us that just want to kick back. I get
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
I get that. And that's just a thing. I don't want to get into it right now.
Well, we
Um,
spend more energy on the bottom 10% than we do on the other 90, which
well,
is
and
something
that's,
that we get backwards, right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
And
that
that
happens a lot.
that's,
Yeah.
that's a, that's a thing where we just got to keep kind of harping on it. And I don't think we're getting up on soapboxes or anything like that. I
No,
think what
no.
we're doing is we're talking about something that we, yourself, myself, the people that we know, the people that we just now get to know, it seems to invariably come to this discussion about the way things are linked together and impact one another. But we definitely got to be able to get out there and know that we're going to make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, just own it. I mean, and some
Mhm.
of them are going to be bad, man. It might take you a minute to own it, but I
Trust
got
me.
to tell
I
you,
think
man.
we've all been we've all been there. You know,
One,
this is the
one,
thing is every one of us have had struggles.
oh yeah,
I don't know anybody in this life that hasn't. They're different, right? But every one of us have, and we've all found ways to overcome them, or we wouldn't be here, right?
yeah,
And it's those little things like that are how you learn and continue to build upon those things, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and then seeing other people's success, it either motivates you or it discourages you, right? But that's a choice you have to make with your attitude. It should motivate you because if that person can do it, you can too.
well,
And
I know earlier I was talking about maintenance and maintenance people, and they want to turn wrenches and sling wrenches. So now I'm going
mm,
to revise that just
sure.
for wrapping this episode. So here's what I'm going to
All
say
right.
instead.
Yeah.
So maintenance people across the board, all of them, they want to do good stuff. They want to produce results. They want the
I
outcomes
agree. I
that we're
agree
after.
100% with it. No one
And
wakes up and goes, I really want to suck today.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Let's see what I can do to suck as suckiest as I could suck today.
Yeah,
Right? I
yeah.
think we're all
That's
well intentioned, right?
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, for
And
sure.
and and when it comes to mistakes, I mean, I don't want people to make CMMS mistakes when they make selections or they stop using or they don't adopt the system properly. I
Mhm.
want them to get a consultant before you make any changes, find out what's really going on.
Mhm.
And when you do make a change, if it doesn't work out, I mean, yeah, somebody might get jammed up over that, but stop for a minute, do a reassessment before you make any big changes. Those are mistakes we can avoid, but we all got to keep growing. We got to be more self aware. And in the maintenance world, one thing I've noticed so far over my time in certain areas of it, whereas yours is in others and so on, I've seen consistently that everybody's just really trying to keep moving, get stuff done, and they're not as afraid of problems as we might think. I think what it is they know that making change is really hard. So, take a moment, dig in. Joe, I want to really thank you for this time. We're going to be doing this again because we got a lot
Yep.
to talk about, especially with
Sounds
what we
great.
talked about today.
Yeah,
So now,
anytime.
how would you prefer people reach out to you? Now, I know with Reliability X, you can always send an email to ask@reliabilityx.com and you're going to be golden. But
Yeah.
for you, Joe, do you want people to reach out to you directly?
Yeah, they can reach out to me directly, either through LinkedIn. I get a lot of DMs through LinkedIn. I do a lot of conversating there. My email, joseph.anderson@reliabilityx.com. Send me an email. I'd be more than happy to have discussions, um, anything with you. That's probably the two main ways to contact me. Um,
Excellent.
or, attend courses or things like that. Like we teach that certificate program at UW. So we have courses coming up. I know George has one. You had him on there.
Yep.
It's a good way to meet personally and have some more intimate discussions around things. I have two classes, well, actually, three classes coming up in the next month and a half um, at UW. For one is improving equipment uptime.
Hmm.
So I take people through the breakdowns of processes and systems and their ability to implement a robust maintenance strategy. I got a new class. It's business basics for maintenance that I'll be teaching. I think one of the largest gaps I've seen in my time in consulting is the fact that we don't truly understand the business side of things. So it makes it hard for us to have that communication with upper level leadership when we need to have, that communication and to be able to speak to the data and do those types of things. So I'm excited about that course. Hopefully there's value in that. And then I teach a lubrication fundamentals course as well in November. So if you want more information on that, you can go to the Interpro website. It's Interpro, I believe, wisconsin.edu or wisc.edu, and their professional certificate programs or personal development certificate programs. So
Yeah.
other than that, man, it was a great time. Greg, I always appreciate talking to you. Anytime
Yeah,
you want to do this, let's do this. So
me too. I think it's just critically important that people can gain insights, knowledge, ideas, and just change up their perspectives. I think any beliefs that we have, I mean, if they're really that good, we should challenge them every now and then. And don't forget to think critically. Don't lean on AI too much with all of your questions, and talk to somebody and just keep doing that, because I think there's always a way forward. Even if everything's a catastrophe, there's a way forward. So
yeah.
I
Well, I
really
think the
appreciate this
downfall of
time.
AI is they're starting to see that there's biases built into it.
Hmm.
Right? So
Hmm.
that's going to be, you're always going to need people. And people, we have to be the greatest people we can be. And that's what
Yeah,
it's all about, man, at the end of the day. So
for sure.
awesome.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Hey, no worries. Appreciate it.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit cmmsradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.